Hello and welcome to Storytime Reddit. Today's story comes from r/NuclearRevenge. First up, ruined a marriage and my family for revenge. Second, never piss off a rich redneck. So, I recently discovered this sub and had a personal story to share. On mobile, so forgive formatting, grammar, etc. Story is several years old. I've always been the black sheep of the family. Cousins grew up to be doctors, professors, creatives, and whatever else. Meanwhile, I've managed to just make a humble, stable passive income through some business decisions. Nothing fancy, but I can afford a one-bedroom in New York City and live comfortably with that and a part-time job in a cafe. Everyone in the family, including my own parents, judge me harshly for not pushing myself to do what my cousins do, especially my one cousin we will call Randy. Think the stereotypical dude bro who got rich thanks to working for his dad, multiply that by 10 and you got Randy. Anyway, he always gave me the most shit, and eventually I just tuned them out because I get to enjoy my life with my significant other, work part-time, and still afford what I want. So, to cut the BS short, Randy has a wife and 2 kids. He also had a mistress. I found this out because one day when I was walking through the city, when I saw him walking down the street with a woman who clearly wasn't his wife, arms around each other. I checked Facebook and saw he had indeed posted about visiting a bagel shop in the city while on a business trip that morning. So we headed to the city. So I decided, F it, let me see how this plays out. I followed them for 5 hours, snapped several photos, one of them going into a hotel together. I held on to these and waited until Christmas that year, about 6 months later. I decided to unceremoniously drop printed photos in front of everyone at the table before dinner and made sure to get his wife to see them. Cue screaming and fighting. I actually got a black eye out of it. It was Randy's dad who did it though, not him. Cue police, a lot of questioning. My significant other and I get kicked out. We head back home after talking to the cops one last time. The aftermath. Besides Randy's wife and another cousin who hates Randy, my family cut me off entirely for several years. Whatever. Even my parents had always expressed disappointment in me for not applying myself fully, so no real loss there. Randy got divorced, lost full custody of the kids after threatening his ex. Family occasionally tries to guilt me into apologizing, but my response is some variation of not going to apologize for outing a cheating hunt, and I'm promptly blocked for another few months. Significant other and Randy's ex-wife are good friends, and the kids call me uncle. Nice having a family who actually loves me unconditionally for once. Significant other and I got married, and that's when my family last tried to get into contact with me and were actually nice for once. Seeing me moving on, I guess, eats at them. I don't know, maybe realizing their punching bag is gone for good. That's it, really. Living my best life now with a good family as opposed to a hit one. Edit. First, thanks for support and awards. Second, a bunch of y'all seem to think being abused is not traumatic or bad as several comments seem to be saying. Wow, you're a bad person for having a negative reaction to abuse and not handling it like a golden human being. So I'll clarify. The comments about my wasted potential weren't just, oh, your cousin's a doctor, what about you? They were, I can't believe Randy just sealed a deal for X amount of dollars. Are you still working at that hitty cafe? Are you still seeing what's her name? The girl with the pudgy stomach? Aren't you ever going to do anything with your life? I feel so worthless living like that. Those are the nicer ones. The worst ones include being told that it's better I didn't try, as I wouldn't amount to anything, and other such things along those lines, as I really don't care to remember the more toxic lines. I'm not interested in judgment. Go post on Am I the A-hole threads if you want to say your piece about that, but don't effing tell me that I wasn't an abuse victim and wasn't treated horribly by my own family just because I didn't spell out the nitty-gritty details. This is a strange blend of petty plus nuclear. I like it, I really do. OP. I think what really made me snap is while I never consciously acknowledged it until after this event, my family was just super toxic, so this was a big send-off, F you from me to them. I get it. Randy's a hunt, but it sounds like it's really just about upsetting the family for all the times they chipped away at your self-confidence and happiness. You shattered their idyllic delusional reality. That had to be satisfying. I understand that Randy is still family to them, but why would they side with him or against you when he was actively cheating on his wife and broke up his own family? You shouldn't have to apologize to scum like him. OP. Because he was the golden boy. They are willing to forgive a lot of shot while hypocritically judging others for the same hit. Randy cheated? Whatever. Their neighbor cheated? Pure scum. And now, never piss off a rich redneck. This is a story about my grandparents' friend. I was a young teen, but given the outcome, the story has stuck with me. I've sat on the story for a while, but it's so satisfying to see a gaggle of Karens taken down a notch that I figured I'd share. For the sake of this story, we will call my grandparents' friend William. Now, my grandparents knew William from way back. My grandmother knew him from school, and my grandfather met him after marrying my grandmother. Anyways, in the 60s, Grandma was a manager at the 7-Eleven. William led a crew that went there every day. It was the only gas station in a 30-minute radius, so everyone knew everyone in that sleepy coastal town kind of way. Now, one day, William was doing a job down on the waterfront and slipped, fell, and broke his back. While he was healing from the operation and was broke as a joke, my grandma would always make sure to send him something to eat that she'd pay for when the crew would come in to grab their snacks and gas up, knowing William would simply skip the meal to save the money for his own family. My grandpa also took him to several doctor appointments since William couldn't drive for a while and his tiny little wife couldn't wrangle him into a car by herself. William never forgot that. 20 years later, when he sold off his now very successful business and was a millionaire about 20 times over, he promptly told 90% of the world to go to hell, but kept those that had always been there for him close. Meanwhile, he never moved from the house that he'd had since before he was rich. His only concessions to his wealth were trips with his wife to see the world and buying up quite a few acres of the forested land around him. If you weren't his friend, you'd take him for every other blue-collar worker in the town. There was absolutely nothing obvious to show that he was worth tens of millions of dollars. After his wife died in the 90s, William decided to take up a new hobby. As he lived outside of the city limits, he set up a sawmill and woodworking shop. Got all the proper permits and everything. The saws were in a big old enclosed building in the middle of all that land, so in all honesty, no harm, no foul, right? Wrong. The family that owned the forest behind William's land had just sold it to developers. Thus, the new luxury-gated neighborhood, the first in the area, was born. Enter a plethora of Chads and Karens who were mostly from up north and had moved down south to take advantage of the better weather and the nearby beach. It didn't take long before they decided to take offense to his little business venture on the other side of the 10-foot-tall wall of their neighborhood because it didn't fit with the image of their community. You know, the community he was decidedly not a part of. So, they sued him. Didn't even try to start a dialogue with him, just up and sued him. William was livid. He was your typical coastal redneck, and he would be damned if those damn Yankees told him what to do on his own property that was not within city limits nor located in an HOA. William countered with professional noise studies that showed that some of the kids in that neighborhood drove vehicles that made more ambient noise than his little operation. Nope. The people in the neighborhood simply threw more money at the lawyers to continue on with the lawsuit. Essentially, their plan was to bleed him dry. Their lawyers, who were not locals, actually told William's lawyer that he should probably advise his client to close the shop so that he wouldn't end up bankrupt due to the resources being thrown at him from the homeowners. Due to the relatively modest surroundings of his home, the neighbors nor their lawyers had any idea the man was actually richer than just about all of them put together. All they saw was an older dude who drove a beat-up 80s model truck and wore Dickies jeans and work shirts that lived in what appeared to be a relatively modest home, especially compared to their McMansions. When William's lawyer told him about that conversation, William lost his effing mind. I clearly remember his screeching into my parents' driveway in that old work truck, cussing up a storm and ranting and raving before he even got in the house. He came to our house. Why? Because my grandmother, bless her heart, was known as one of the most giving people in the world, unless you pissed her off. If you hurt her or someone she cared for, she became one of the most vindictive a-holes that could be found in that town. I am not kidding when I say that her ability for revenge served cold was legendary amongst the locals. So William had come to the house for a dose of her deviousness. Us kids weren't allowed inside during that conversation, but after he left that day, I later heard the adults talking about how he proceeded to hire quite a few private investigators to see if there would be any dirt to dig up on them. By them, I mean the dozens of people in that neighborhood that were a part of that lawsuit. Lo and behold, there was apparently copious amounts of dirt to be had. I still remember him positively crowing about it to my grandparents one fine summer day months later. That 60-something-year-old man was as gleeful as the proverbial kid on Christmas morning. Why? Because after he learned what his little private army dug up, he started making some phone calls to various acquaintances in high places. The ensuing fallout meant that the lawsuit was dropped. There was quite a list of misdeeds that were discovered, but the ones that I heard talked about by the adults that stick out are: there were more than a handful of individuals that owed back child support. William very helpfully had the private investigators provide the mother's updated address and employment information so that they could pursue said child support/garnishment if they wanted to. On top of that, the IRS became very interested in several of those people, as well as various other neighbors. Finally, one household ended up in prison because the investigators realized that they were drug dealers. The pictures of the transactions caught by the PIs were helpfully handed over to the sheriff's department. Drugs are bad, kids. Moral of the story: never piss off a rich redneck. A gaggle of Karens? I think what you meant is an entitlement of Karens. You do not want insulted geese to show up at your door. Actually, I think it's a HOA of Karens. Are you trying to summon an eldritch monster? Do not speak. Listen for the birds. Quoting, one of the most giving people in the world, unless you pissed her off. So tired of this trope, I bet she had a strong sense of justice, too. OP. LOL, she had zero belief in justice, or the justice system for that matter, but she did have a high level of satisfaction at getting back at whomever pissed her off. I suppose the phrase itself is overused, but I'm not a professional writer. My day job is finance. I'm absolutely open to suggestions for a better way to phrase the personality trait she most certainly did possess, though. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. I hope you'll come again soon. Bye for now!